Welcome to Soul Stories, your home for heart-touching tales of love, hope, and second chances. If you believe in the power of kindness and the magic of unexpected connections, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our growing family. Now, let's begin today's story. Clara Monroe trudged down the dim hallway of the rundown apartment building on the outskirts of Chicago. Her worn sneakers squeaked against the peeling wooden floor, echoing through the silence of midnight. She had just returned from her second part-time shift of the day at a cafe 3 blocks away. The smell of toasted bread and coffee still clung to her thin jacket, but her eyes were heavy, not from exhaustion, but from worry. Inside her old canvas bag, her wallet held only $2, and the last can of baby formula for Noah was nearly empty. Noah, the 6-month-old baby Clara had found abandoned at her doorstep 3 months ago, was sleeping soundly in the battered crib she'd bought from a thrift store. Clara stopped in front of her door and took a deep breath. She didn't want to wake the baby, didn't want him to see her panic. But as she opened the door and the weak yellow light from the desk lamp cast a glow on Noah's round face, his rosy cheeks twitching in sleep, Clara's heart clenched. "What am I going to do?" she whispered, collapsing into the frayed armchair beside the crib. At 24, Clara had never imagined her life would turn out like this. She had grown up in a small town in Illinois, dreaming of becoming a kindergarten teacher. But after her parents died in a car accident 4 years ago, she dropped out of college and moved to Chicago, juggling jobs from waitressing to delivery and cleaning just to survive. Then Noah appeared, left in a plastic basket with only a note that read, "Please take care of him." Clara had no reason to keep the baby, but she couldn't turn her back either. "I guess it's fate, huh?" she had once said to Noah with a smile, though sometimes she wondered if she really had the strength to go on. Now, the can of formula on the kitchen shelf had just enough for one last bottle. Clara rummaged through her wallet, counting the 2 crumpled $1 bills as if they could magically multiply. She turned on her phone, its screen cracked in one corner, and scrolled through her contacts. There was no one left to call. Her old friends from home had gradually drifted away, and her co-workers at the cafe were struggling just as much as she was. Then she remembered Sarah, a former classmate who had once said, "If you ever need anything, just text me." Clara didn't want to impose, but for Noah's sake, she had no other choice. She bit her lip and typed out a message with trembling fingers. "Sarah, I'm so sorry to bother you. I'm really stuck and need to buy formula for baby Noah. If you can help even a little, I'll pay you back as soon as I can. Thank you so much." She double-checked the number in her contacts, but too tired to notice she had typed one wrong digit. She hit send, her heart pounding. The phone vibrated lightly, confirming the message had gone through. Clara sighed, convincing herself Sarah would understand. She stood, gently stroked Noah's cheek and whispered, "Everything's going to be okay, baby." Across town in a luxurious penthouse overlooking the Chicago River, Damian Cole sat brooding in a leather chair in his office. The glow from his computer screen illuminated his chiseled features, his deep blue eyes cold yet contemplative. At 33, Damian was the CEO of Cole Enterprises, a billion-dollar tech firm specializing in cybersecurity software. He had built it all from the ground up, but few knew he had once been an orphan, raised in the crumbling foster homes of Ohio. Damian's phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. He frowned, ready to block it immediately. He hated being disturbed, especially at this hour. But the words on the screen made him pause. "Sarah, I'm so sorry to bother you. I'm really stuck and need to buy formula for baby Noah. If you can help even a little, I'll pay you back as soon as I can. Thank you so much." He read it again, slower this time. The words baby Noah and formula stirred a faint memory. Nights spent hungry in the orphanage, wishing someone would show up, even with just a warm bottle of milk. He wondered, was this a scam? A joke? But the tone of the message didn't feel fake. It was sincere, almost desperate. Damian didn't believe in kindness. He'd seen too many people exploit sympathy for their gain. But something about this message wouldn't let him ignore it. He quickly typed a response. "You've got the wrong number. I'm not Sarah." But before hitting send, he hesitated. If this girl really needed help, what harm would it do? Damien shook his head, scoffing at himself. Getting soft, Cole? He muttered. In the end, he opened his payment app and sent $100 to the unknown number, adding a short message. For the baby. He set his phone down and tried to refocus on the report in front of him, but his mind kept drifting back to that text. Who was this girl? And why, with just a few words, had she stirred something in him he thought he had buried long ago? Compassion? The next morning, Clara woke to the sound of her phone ringing. She rubbed her eyes and saw a notification from her money transfer app. $100 from an unknown sender. She froze, rereading the short message. For the baby. No name. No explanation. Clara clutched Noah to her chest as tears welled up in her eyes. There really are good people in the world, baby, she whispered. She rushed to the nearby convenience store and bought 2 cans of formula and a small pack of diapers. When she got home, she laid Noah on the bed and mixed a bottle. Watching him drink contentedly, Clara couldn't help but smile. She picked up her phone and snapped a photo, her sitting on the bed with Noah in her arms, sunlight from the window casting a glow on her tired but glowing face. She sent the photo to the unknown number, along with a message. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. You saved us today. If possible, I'd like to return the money when things get better. When the image appeared on Damien's screen, he was in a meeting. He glanced at it, intending to delete it, but Clara's eyes, full of gratitude and a quiet strength, made him pause. He enlarged the photo and looked at Noah's beaming face in her arms. There was something in that moment that made his long frozen heart stir, just a little. He didn't reply, but he saved the photo to his phone, a gesture he didn't quite understand himself. Clara sat in the worn-out armchair in her cramped apartment, the faint light from the window casting a glow on her face. Noah lay in the crib, his tiny hands gripping the new bottle of formula, his mouth sucking eagerly. Watching him full and content, Clara couldn't help but smile, even though her eyes were still red from emotion. The photo she had sent to the stranger, the one who had wired her $100 without hesitation, remained on her phone, a quiet reminder that there was still good in the world. She opened the message again, reading the simple words, for the baby, no name, no follow-up. Who is this person? She wondered, her finger gently tracing the screen. She thought about sending another thank you message, but hesitated, not wanting to intrude. The person hadn't replied to the photo. Maybe they didn't want to get involved any further. Clara sighed and set the phone down. She got up, checked the 2 new cans of formula, and carefully placed them in the corner of the tiny kitchen. Enough for 2 weeks, she murmured, doing the math in her head. But then what? Her cafe job barely covered the rent, and her extra shifts at the convenience store were unpredictable. She needed a long-term plan, for Noah, for both of them. Clara turned back to look at Noah, now fast asleep, his rosy cheeks puffing slightly with each breath. I won't let you go hungry again, she whispered, as if making a promise to herself. She tucked the blanket over him and sat on the floor, resting her head against the crib. In that quiet moment, she thought about the stranger. They weren't Sarah, but they had helped her anyway. If I ever meet you someday, she whispered, I'll thank you properly. Even if she knew it was just wishful thinking. Just a few blocks away, in a sleek office on the 42nd floor of Cole Enterprises, Damien Cole sat alone, the glow from his computer monitor lighting up his face. The wall clock read nearly 10 p.m., but he hadn't moved from his seat. Before him was a spreadsheet full of financial charts, but his mind wasn't on the numbers. His phone rested on the desk, still showing the photo Claire had sent that morning. He had opened it more times than he cared to admit, each time telling himself he'd delete it. There was nothing extraordinary about the photo. A young woman, her hair loosely tied up, wearing a faded t-shirt, sitting on a bed with a baby in her arms. But her eyes, tired yet glowing with gratitude, held him captive. The baby Noah beamed with a wide, gummy smile, his big eyes sparkling. Damien wasn't easily moved. He had taught himself to shut down his emotions long ago, growing up in orphanages where kindness always came with a price. But this photo, the tone in the girl's message, something about it felt different. He clicked to close the financial report, then picked up his phone. Zooming in, he studied the photo more closely. The girl, Clara, if he had guessed correctly from the message, looked no older than 25. Her face was bare of makeup but had a natural, honest kind of beauty. Damien let out a wry smile. "What are you doing, Cole?" he muttered to himself. He wasn't used to being this affected by a stranger, especially someone he'd never even met. He reopened Clara's message. "Thank you, from the bottom of my heart. You saved us today. If possible, I'd like to return the money when things are better." He frowned. Return it? She thought she could repay $100 when she was desperate enough to beg for formula? He shook his head, finding it both amusing and baffling. People like her didn't exist in his world, a world built on strategy where everything came with a price. He remembered the moment he sent the money. He hadn't thought much of it, just $100, nothing to him. But when he'd read her message, the words "baby Noah" had touched a hidden place inside him. He had once been a child like Noah, left behind, unwanted. On those hungry nights, he used to wish for someone, anyone, to bring him a bottle of milk, a warm hug. Maybe that's why he sent the money, though he didn't want to admit he was going soft. Damien set his phone down, got up, and stepped onto the balcony. The cold wind from the Michigan River blew against his face, calming his restless thoughts. He looked out over the city, glittering with lights, wondering where Clara and Noah were among the millions of people down there. Were they okay? How long would $100 last? He shook his head, trying to brush off the thought. It was just a one-time favor, nothing more, he told himself. But when he returned to his desk, he couldn't help but open the photo again. He stared at Noah, then at Clara. There was something in the way she held the baby, gentle yet unwavering, that reminded him of his mother, a woman he only remembered in vague impressions. Damien didn't know what his mother looked like, but he always imagined she had eyes like Clara's, strong yet filled with love. The next morning, Clara woke up early to get ready for her cafe shift. She tied up her hair, put on her old coat, and gently lifted Noah, placing him in the stroller. "Today's going to be a good day, right, baby?" she said, kissing his forehead. Noah giggled, waving his tiny hands like he agreed. Clara pushed the stroller toward the door, feeling lighter than the day before. There was formula, there were diapers for at least a week. Somehow she felt stronger, thanks to one small act from a stranger. At the cafe, Clara wiped down tables while telling her coworker, Mia, about the stranger who had sent her the money. "Can you believe it? Someone sent me $100 just because I sent a message to the wrong number," she said, her eyes bright. Mia, busy pouring coffee, laughed. "Probably some bored rich guy trying to play hero for once. Be careful. What if he wants something in return?" Clara shook her head, smiling. "Number, I think he was just kind." But deep down, Clara couldn't stop thinking about the stranger. She wondered if they'd read her thank you message, if they'd seen the photo. She hoped they knew how much it meant to her. "If I ever get the chance," she thought, "I'll buy that person a coffee," even if she knew it was just a dream. Meanwhile, Damien started his day as usual, a morning meeting with the executive board, reviewing new contracts, and going through a flood of emails. But during the meeting, as a CFO presented the quarterly earnings report, Damien found his gaze drifting toward the window. He thought of Clara, of Noah. He wondered what the girl did for a living and why she was taking care of a baby that wasn't even hers. He wasn't used to being distracted like this, and it irritated him. When the meeting ended, his assistant Rachel walked in with a fresh cup of coffee. "You okay, sir?" she asked, noticing something different in his expression. He nodded but said nothing. Rachel, long accustomed to his stoic nature, didn't press further. But as soon as she left, Damien picked up his phone and looked at the photo again. He hadn't replied to Clara's message. He didn't want to get involved. But deep down he knew. He wanted to know more about her, the woman who, even for just a moment, made him believe that kindness still existed. Saturday afternoon in Chicago carried the crispness of early fall, with a light breeze sweeping golden leaves across the sidewalk. Clara pushed Noah's stroller down a familiar street, heading toward the corner convenience store. She wore an old coat, her hair tied loosely at the back with a few strands falling over her forehead. Noah sat in the stroller, his wide eyes observing everything around him, babbling cheerful sounds. Clara smiled and bent down to adjust the tiny knit hat on his head. "You love being outside, don't you?" she said softly. Noah answered with a happy giggle that warmed her heart. She entered the store with a clear plan. Pick up some instant noodles, discounted yogurt, and maybe a few apples if there were any left. Her budget was still tight, though the $100 from the stranger had helped her get through the week. Clara mentally tallied her spending as she pushed the stroller past the aisles. She stopped at the clearance section, carefully choosing the cheapest items. Noah reached out toward a box of cereal on a nearby shelf, making Clara laugh. "Not today, buddy. We're only getting the essentials," she said gently, guiding his hand back. At that moment, Damian Cole stepped into the convenience store, hands tucked into the pockets of his black leather jacket, his expression as cool and unreadable as always. He didn't usually visit places like this. His office had a state-of-the-art espresso machine, and his assistant Rachel ensured he never lacked anything. But after a stressful meeting, he had decided to take a walk to clear his head. This store was on the way home, and he figured he'd grab a black coffee, the only thing he trusted at places like this. Damian stood at the coffee station, absent-mindedly watching the clerk pour his drink into a paper cup. He wasn't paying much attention to his surroundings until a child's laughter pulled him from his thoughts. He turned and his gaze landed on a stroller just a few steps away. The baby inside, a little boy with rosy cheeks and large bright eyes, was looking right at him, giggling and waving his tiny hands as if greeting an old friend. Damian froze. There was something familiar about the boy, though he couldn't place it right away. Then he looked up at the woman pushing the stroller. She was bent over, smiling at the baby, her voice soft and affectionate. "Noah, you're distracting Mommy again," she said. Her hair fell forward and her face was bare, free of makeup. But her eyes, tired yet filled with warmth and light, made Damian's heart skip a beat. It was her, the woman from the photo, the one who had sent the mistaken message, the one he hadn't been able to stop thinking about all week. Clara, unaware of Damian's gaze, pushed the stroller toward the checkout counter. As she passed him, Noah suddenly reached out toward Damian again, giggling louder as if recognizing a friend. Clara startled slightly and pulled the stroller back, turning to Damian with an apologetic smile. "Oh, I'm so sorry. He loves saying hello to strangers," she said, her voice light and sincere. She bent down to fix Noah's hat again, then looked up at Damian. The moment their eyes met, time seemed to slow. Damian stared at her, stunned to see her standing there in the flesh. Her smile, her eyes, they were exactly like in the photo, only more vivid, more real. He opened his mouth, but all he managed to say was, "You." Clara tilted her head, confused. "Did we meet before?" she asked, trying to recall. His face looked vaguely familiar, chiseled features, piercing blue eyes, and the confident presence of someone who didn't belong in this neighborhood. Maybe he was a cafe customer, or someone she had delivered to before. She gave him a polite smile, waiting for his answer. Damian shook his head, trying to compose himself. He couldn't just tell her he recognized her from a photo she had unknowingly sent him. That would be weird, creepy even. "No, I must have mistaken you for someone else," he said, his deep voice slightly hesitant. He looked down at Noah, still beaming at him, and felt his chest tighten. That was definitely the baby from the photo. There was no doubt. Clara nodded, still smiling. "No worries. Noah loves the attention," she said, stroking the baby's cheek. She pushed the stroller toward the register, but for some reason, she could still feel the man's gaze on her. She turned her head slightly and caught him looking at her, his eyes intense, searching. Damian stood still, holding his coffee cup, his thoughts tangled. He wanted to say something, to ask if she was the one who'd sent the message, but he held back. He wasn't used to acting on impulse, and he didn't want to frighten her. Still, he couldn't let her walk away without some kind of connection. He stepped forward, casually passing by the checkout counter, and stopped near Clara. "He's really adorable," he said, voice softer now, trying to sound casual. Clara turned, a bit surprised. "Thank you," she replied, her face lighting up at the mention of Noah. "He's my whole world." She pulled a few items from the stroller and placed them on the counter, carefully counting crumpled bills from her wallet. Damian noticed how precise she was with each coin, and it reminded him of the desperate message she'd sent. He wanted to help, but how could he offer without making her feel ashamed? "Do you come here often?" Damien asked, trying to keep the conversation going. Clara looked at him, surprised he was still talking. Sometimes they have good discounts here, she said with a smile. The cashier announced the total, and Clara handed over a few wrinkled dollar bills. Damien stood nearby, feeling an odd pull. He wanted to know more about her, about Noah, about their life. As Clara finished paying and was about to leave, Damien called out suddenly, "Wait, if you ever if you're looking for something more stable, I might be able to help," he said quickly, reaching into his jacket and pulling out a business card. "Call me if you're interested." Clara took the card, a little surprised. Cole Enterprises, and embossed beneath it, Damien Cole. Clara stood in front of the mirror in her cramped apartment, adjusting the collar of her worn-out white blouse. She sighed, taking in her reflection. This was the most professional outfit she owned. A frayed shirt, black jeans, and a pair of old but clean sneakers. In her canvas bag, she carefully tucked away the business card the stranger, Damien Cole, had given her at the convenience store last week. "Cole Enterprises," she murmured, reading the embossed letters. "If you need a stable job, call me." His words echoed in her mind, half opportunity, half impossibility. She hadn't planned to contact him. A man like Damien, with his confident demeanor and expensive suit, surely hadn't meant it seriously when he handed his card to a broke girl like her. But 2 days ago, the manager at the cafe had announced a cut in hours due to poor business. The extra shifts at the grocery store barely covered rent, formula for Noah, and other daily expenses. Clara had counted and recounted what little she had left, and each time her heart sank. She couldn't let Noah go without. "Noah, Mommy has to try," she whispered, kissing her baby boy's forehead. Noah, sitting happily in his stroller, giggled and waved his tiny hands as if cheering her on. Clara smiled, but inside, nerves twisted in her stomach. She dropped Noah off with Miss Linda, her kind-hearted neighbor who had agreed to watch him for a few hours. Then she boarded a bus toward downtown Chicago, where the towering Cole Enterprises building gleamed among the glassy high-rises. As she stepped into the building's grand lobby, Clara felt like she'd entered another world. Marble floors glistened beneath polished shoes. Employees in sleek suits moved with purpose. Soft classical music played overhead, making her feel even more out of place. She tightened her grip on her bag and approached the reception desk. I'm here to see Mr. Damien Cole," she said, her voice slightly trembling. The receptionist, a young woman with a professional smile, looked Clara up and down. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked. Clara shook her head and pulled out the business card. He gave me this. Told me to come if I needed a job." The receptionist raised an eyebrow but picked up the phone. Clara stood there, feeling like everyone in the lobby was staring at her. She wondered if she was making a fool of herself. Maybe Damien had forgotten her. Maybe he hadn't meant it at all. But before she could turn to leave, the receptionist smiled again. "Mr. Cole is expecting you. Take the elevator on the right to the 42nd floor." Inside his spacious office, Damien sat behind his desk, eyes on the screen, but thoughts elsewhere. Since that chance encounter at the convenience store, he hadn't been able to stop thinking about the woman and the baby. Noah. The photo she'd sent still sat in his phone, and every time he looked at it, he felt an inexplicable pull. He wanted to know who she was, to understand why she stirred something in him he hadn't felt in years. When his assistant Rachel informed him that a woman named Clara Monroe was downstairs with his business card, Damien nearly jumped to his feet. "Send her up," he said, voice steady but heart racing. He hadn't told anyone he was the one who sent the $100. He intended to keep that private, at least for now, but he knew their meeting at the store wasn't just a coincidence. Fate had brought her to him, and he had no intention of letting her disappear again. When Clara stepped into the office, Damien stood, trying to maintain his usual composure. But he couldn't take his eyes off her. She looked simple, even slightly out of place in such a luxurious space. But there was something about her, a quiet strength, an honesty that made it impossible for him to look away. "Hello," Damien said, motioning to the seat across from him. "You came." Clara sat down, clutching her bag. "Thank you, Mr. Cole, for seeing me," she said, her voice hesitant. I'm not sure if you remember, but last week at the convenience store, Damien nodded, cutting her off. I remember. Noah, right? He gave her a small smile, and to Clara's surprise, it softened his otherwise intimidating face. I heard you're looking for work, Damien continued, his tone calm and measured. Clara nodded, swallowing her nerves. My hours got cut, and I need something more stable. I don't have much office experience, but I learn fast and I work hard, she said quickly, afraid he'd change his mind. Damien watched her, his gaze steady. He didn't need to hear more. He had already made up his mind the moment she walked through the door. I have a temporary assistant position available, he said. No experience needed, just reliability. The pay should be enough to take care of Noah. He mentioned Noah on purpose, curious to see her reaction. Clara's eyes lit up, but then she hesitated. Why are you helping me? I mean, you don't even know me. Damien shrugged, masking the deeper truth. I trust my instincts, and Noah seems like a special kid. Clara smiled, a weight lifting from her chest. Thank you. I won't let you down. Damien nodded, but deep inside, he knew he wasn't just helping. He wanted her close. He wanted to observe her, to understand why someone like her had made him, someone who always stayed in control, feel so disoriented. On her first day at Cole Enterprises, Clara arrived with a heart full of nerves. She wore the same white blouse, doing her best to look professional. Rachel, Damien's assistant, showed her around the office, explaining her tasks, managing meeting schedules, replying to simple emails, and assisting with basic errands. Mr. Cole can be tough, but as long as you do your job well, you'll be fine, Rachel said with an encouraging smile. Clara nodded, determined to give it her all, even if she was way out of her comfort zone. She worked hard even though everything was new. She took detailed notes, double-checked emails before sending them, and completed every task ahead of schedule. But what surprised her most was Damien. He often appeared without warning, asking about her work in a cool, detached tone. But his eyes told a different story. One time, while she was organizing files, he stood beside her desk for a while. You doing okay? How's the job so far? He asked. Clara smiled. It's going well. Thank you for the opportunity. Damien said nothing more, but walked away feeling something he didn't fully understand. He had told himself hiring Clara was just a way to help her, a repayment for that moment when she made him believe in kindness again. But every time he saw her, the way she focused, the way she smiled even when she was clearly exhausted, he felt something shift in his heart, little by little. He didn't want to admit it, but he was waiting for something more from her, from fate itself. Clara sat at her small desk in the Cole Enterprises office, afternoon light streaming in from the large windows and illuminating the stack of documents she was organizing. It had been 2 weeks since she started her temporary assistant position, and while everything was still new, she was beginning to find her rhythm. She carefully noted down meeting times, double-checked emails, and occasionally glanced at the clock, counting down the minutes until she could pick up Noah from Mrs. Linda, the kind neighbor who had been helping her out. Today, however, Mrs. Linda was sick, and Clara had no choice but to bring Noah with her to the office. She worried about what Damien or her co-workers might think, but she had no other option. Noah sat in his stroller beside her desk, wide eyes exploring his new surroundings, tiny hands gripping a plastic rattle. Every now and then he cooed, drawing smiles from a few passing colleagues. Clara leaned down, gently brushing his cheek. Be good, sweetheart. Mommy just has a bit more work to finish. She didn't notice Damien standing quietly by the conference room door, his gaze fixed on the two of them. Damien had grown used to watching Clara from afar. He admired the way she worked with focus and quiet grace, how she always managed a smile even when exhaustion peeked through her eyes. But seeing Noah here today brought an unfamiliar warmth to his chest. The baby, with his bright grin and rosy cheeks, seemed to bring light into the entire room. Damien walked over, his hands tucked into the pockets of his tailored vest, his voice low but kind. Looks like we have a special little guest today. Clara startled, looking up. Oh, Mr. Cole, I'm so sorry, she said, flustered. My babysitter is sick today, and I didn't have anyone else. I promise he won't disturb anyone. Damien waved it off and sat down in a chair near the stroller. It's fine. He's not bothering anyone. He looked at Noah, and when the baby reached toward him with a giggle, Damien instinctively smiled. He extended a finger, letting the tiny hand wrap around it. The warmth of that small touch caught him off guard. Clara watched Damien surprised. He was always so cold, so composed, but in that moment, he looked entirely different, gentle, approachable. She smiled and teased. Noah likes you. He's not usually this friendly with strangers. Damien raised an eyebrow, still letting Noah hold his finger. So I'm special then? He replied with a hint of dry humor. Clara laughed, and for the first time, the air between them felt light, free of the barrier between boss and employee. Their conversation started casually, small talk about work and office routines, but gradually shifted back to Noah. How old is he now? Damien asked, eyes still on the baby. 6 months, Clara said, her expression softening as she looked at Noah. It feels like I just found him yesterday. She spoke without thinking and immediately realized what she'd said. Damien's brow furrowed slightly. Found him? Clara bit her lip, hesitating. She hadn't meant to share this, especially not with her boss, but Damien's eyes, deep and unjudging, made her feel safe. Taking a breath, she lowered her voice. Noah isn't my biological child. I found him on the doorstep of my apartment 3 months ago. It was the same day I lost my last job. My savings were gone. I had nothing left. But there he was, just lying there with a note that said, "Please take care of him." I couldn't walk away. She paused, eyes glistening, as she looked down at Noah. I know I had nothing. No money, no proper home, but I couldn't hand him over to anyone else. He needed me, and maybe I needed him too. Her voice trembled, but her smile was genuine, like she was telling a story that had changed her life for the better. Damien stayed silent, his gaze fixed on Noah. The baby's wide eyes, the way he smiled as if hungry for affection. It stirred something deep in Damien's chest. He remembered the orphanage in Ohio, the cold nights, the absence of arms to hold him, the silence where love should have been. He, too, had once been a boy like Noah, left behind, waiting for someone who never came. Clara's story pierced a scar he had long buried. He wanted to say something, but his throat tightened. Instead, he looked at Clara again and saw the strength in her, a woman who had given everything for a child who wasn't even hers. He wondered if he would have had the courage to do what she had. You're something special, he finally said, his voice hoarse. Clara blushed and shook her head. Number, I just did what felt right. Noah deserves a home. Damien nodded, but inside he felt a growing distance. Her story moved him deeply, but it also stirred the pain he'd tried so hard to forget. He feared this emotion, this closeness. He had built his life on control, on never letting anyone touch his scars. And now Clara, with her compassion and honesty, was shaking the foundation he'd built. He stood abruptly, adjusting his vest, trying to recompose himself. You're doing a great job, he said, voice even again. If you need anything for Noah, talk to Rachel. Clara nodded, a bit puzzled by the sudden shift. Thank you, Mr. Cole, she replied, though her eyes lingered on him, searching for something beneath the formality. As Damien left the room, he walked briskly back to his office and closed the door behind him. He sat down, unlocked his phone, and opened the photo of Clara and Noah once more. He thought about her story, about the baby, about himself. He wanted to be closer. He wanted to protect them both. But fear, of vulnerability, of reopening old wounds, held him back. He told himself this was just kindness, a temporary act of generosity. But deep down, he knew he was running from something far greater, a feeling he wasn't yet ready to face. Meanwhile, Clara returned to her work, feeling strangely relieved. Sharing Noah's secret had lifted a weight from her chest. She didn't know why she told Damien, but something about him, something sincere beneath the cold exterior, had made her open up. She looked over at Noah, now happily playing with his toy, and smiled. Mommy told the big boss your story today, she whispered playfully. But in her heart, she kept wondering about Damien. Why did he care about Noah? And why had his eyes looked so pained when she told her story? What Clara didn't know was that, in a quiet corner of the office, Damien was at war with himself, torn between the urge to step closer and the fear of being hurt again. But fate, which had brought them together once, had no plans of stopping here. Clara pushed Noah's stroller down the gleaming hallway of Cole Enterprises, trying not to spill the coffee cup balanced in her hand. It had been a month since she started the temporary assistant job, and though she still had awkward moments here and there, she was slowly settling into a rhythm. She organized Damien's meetings with precision, replied to emails diligently, and had even conquered the photocopier, which she had dubbed the monster during her first week. But what she loved most about the job wasn't the steady paycheck, though it certainly helped her buy formula and diapers without counting every penny. It was the small smiles from co-workers and the peace she felt knowing Noah was safe beside her. Today, Mrs. Linda, her kind neighbor who normally watched Noah, had a doctor's appointment, so Clara brought him to the office again. Noah sat in his stroller, dressed in a soft green onesie, his wide eyes full of wonder as he took in the surroundings. He flailed his little arms, sending a stuffed bear tumbling to the floor, and Clara laughed as she bent to retrieve it. "You're a little troublemaker, huh?" she said, kissing his chubby cheek. A few co-workers passed by, and instead of frowning, they smiled and waved at Noah. "This kid's the office mascot," Rachel, Damien's assistant, had once joked, and Clara had blushed red. At first, Noah's presence had stirred curiosity. A young woman, a temporary assistant, bringing a baby to work, it raised a few eyebrows. But Clara's kindness and work ethic quickly silenced the doubts. She always completed tasks ahead of schedule, offered help to anyone who needed it, and her smile, though often tired, made the office feel warmer. Noah, with his toothless grin and cheerful babbling, became everyone's favorite distraction. One time while Clara was making copies, Noah let out a loud giggle that turned the entire office's heads. "This little guy needs his own employee badge," someone joked, and laughter echoed through the room. From his office, Damien watched it all in silence. He didn't want to admit it, but Clara and Noah had changed the atmosphere at Cole Enterprises. Once cold and quiet, filled only with the click of keyboards and tense meetings, now the air felt lighter, punctuated with baby giggles and casual human conversation. He found himself looking forward to the days Noah came in, not just for the baby, but for Clara too. The way she cared for Noah, the way she worked with quiet determination, the way she made the space around her feel more alive. One afternoon, Clara was eating a sandwich in the break room when Damien walked in unexpectedly, carrying a takeout box from a nearby Italian place. "Have you had lunch?" he asked, voice steady, but his eyes a little unsure. Clara blinked, gesturing to her half-eaten sandwich. "I'm fine, thank you." Damien shrugged and set the box on the table. "Ordered the wrong dish. Don't want it to go to waste." He sat across from her, pretending to check his phone, but his gaze kept drifting to Clara and Noah, who sat in a baby chair, his mouth smeared with mashed potatoes. Clara hesitated, but the smell of pasta was too tempting. "Thank you, Mr. Cole," she said, opening the box. They began talking, first about work, but then Damien asked, "How's Noah today? He seems to really like the office." Clara laughed, wiping Noah's mouth. "He likes anywhere people pay attention to him." Damien smiled, and for the first time, Clara realized his smile wasn't just polite, it was genuine, warm. From that day on, those lunches became a quiet routine. Damien often appeared with excuses like leftovers or needed to go over scheduling, but he stayed longer than necessary, chatting, playing with Noah, asking Clara questions. One time when Noah tried crawling across the office rug, Damien got down on the floor, pretending to be a horse for Noah to grab onto. Clara laughed until tears welled in her eyes. Colleagues passing by were stunned. "Did Mr. Cole just joke?" Rachel whispered later, and Clara could only shake her head, heart fluttering strangely. These moments began to chip away at the walls Damien had spent years building. He smiled more, stopped being so rigid. He found joy in the way Noah grabbed his finger, in the way Clara told stories with light in her eyes. He remembered her story about finding Noah, abandoned, unloved, and how she had chosen to care, to love anyway. She wasn't just a temporary hire. She was something else, someone extraordinary. And yet, even as his heart softened, Damien couldn't let himself take the next step. Every time he felt too close, like when Clara's hand brushed his while passing a document, or when she smiled and thanked him, his childhood memories would come rushing back. The orphanage, the broken promises, the lesson he'd learned too well. Don't trust, don't hope. He feared that opening his heart to Clara would bring pain, that he'd become that little boy again, waiting for a family that never came. One late afternoon, Clara left early with Noah, pushing the stroller under the soft glow of sunset. Damien stood at his office window, watching her disappear down the street. Noah turned around in his seat and waved at the building, as if he knew Damien was watching. Damien smiled, but it faded quickly. "You can't do this, Cole," he murmured to himself. He wanted to be part of their world, but fear of losing control kept him at a distance. He told himself he was just helping Clara, that his concern was simple kindness. But every time he looked at her and Noah, he knew deep down, he was lying to himself. Meanwhile, Clara had begun to notice a change in Damien. He was no longer just the cold, distant boss she'd met at the convenience store. He was gentle with Noah, thoughtful in ways she didn't fully understand. But she also sensed something held back in his eyes, like he was constantly battling something inside. "He's my boss, Clara," she told herself, trying to shut down the foolish thoughts. And yet, as she watched Noah play with the little toy Damien had quietly left on her desk, her heart fluttered. She didn't dare hope for anything, but she knew she was starting to care for this man, more than just as her employer. Clara sat at her desk in the Cole Enterprises office, afternoon light pouring through the large windows and casting a soft glow over the stack of documents she was reviewing. Noah was at home with Mrs. Linda today, giving Clara a rare moment of quiet to focus. But her thoughts weren't fully on work. She kept thinking about Damien, the cold, distant boss who had grown increasingly gentle, especially around Noah. The lunches he brought, the way he played with Noah on the office rug, and that look in his eyes, deep, unreadable, as though hiding something, left her endlessly curious. Who was he really beyond the CEO of a billion-dollar company? Today, Damien had asked Clara to reorganize some old files related to the company's charitable projects, specifically a long-standing initiative supporting orphans in Chicago. She carefully flipped through each page, reviewing reports on scholarships and foster programs. Tucked inside an older folder, she found a yellow newspaper article with a headline that read, "From Orphanage to Empire, The Journey of Damien Cole." Clara froze, her heart beating faster. She glanced around to make sure no one was watching, then quickly skimmed the article. It detailed Damien's childhood, a boy abandoned at an orphanage in Ohio, growing up in crumbling group homes with no family, no support, no hope. He had taught himself, won scholarships, and eventually built Cole Enterprises from the ground up. The article praised him as a symbol of perseverance, but Clara saw the pain hidden between the lines. The sterile words couldn't hide the loneliness of a child who had longed to be loved. She placed the article down, eyes shimmering with emotion. Suddenly, everything about Damien made sense. His quiet protectiveness toward Noah, the sorrow in his eyes when she told the story of finding the baby. He understood Noah because he had once been Noah. Clara picked up the article again, her heart in turmoil. She wanted to ask Damien about it, to understand more, but she feared crossing a line. He kept his distance, even as the moments between them grew more tender. She tucked the article back into the folder, but his story lingered in her mind all day. When Damien appeared at the office doorway later that evening, she jumped and quickly closed the folder. "Finished?" he asked, his voice as calm as ever. He wore a rolled-up dress shirt with no jacket, more relaxed than usual. Clara nodded, though her expression was hesitant. "Yes, I just finished organizing the files for the charity project." Damien raised an eyebrow and stepped closer. "Find anything interesting?" he asked lightly, almost teasing, but Clara didn't smile. She took a breath, gathering her courage. "I found an article," she said softly, "about you, about how you grew up in an orphanage." Damien froze. A shadow flickered across his expression. He was silent, and Clara instantly regretted bringing it up. I'm sorry, she said quickly. I didn't mean to intrude. He waved a hand, sitting down in the chair across from her. It's fine. It's not exactly a secret, he said evenly. But Clara noticed the way his hands tensed in his lap. She bit her lip, then asked gently, Is that why you care about Noah? Because he reminds you of yourself? Her question struck deep, cutting through the layers Damien had spent years building. He turned his gaze toward the window, where the fiery hues of sunset painted the sky. He wanted to deny it, to retreat behind the wall he always kept up. But Clara's eyes, open, kind, non-judgmental, made it impossible to lie. He nodded slowly, his voice rough. Yes, Noah. He's like I was, unwanted, unloved. Clara felt her chest tighten. She thought of the day she found Noah on her doorstep. And now Damien, the boy who had once waited for a family that never came. I'm so sorry, she whispered, eyes glistening. But you've done so much. You didn't just survive, you've helped others. Like Noah. Like me. She stopped abruptly, realizing her words had gone deeper than she'd intended. Damien looked at her, his expression faltering. He wanted to pull away, to slip back into the safety of detachment. But something about Clara, her compassion, her quiet strength, the way she looked at him like he was someone worth caring for, made him stay. No, he said, voice low but steady. I didn't help you just because of Noah. I helped because of you. His words hit her like a wave. Clara's breath caught. Because of me? She echoed, her voice shaking slightly. Damien nodded, his gaze locked on hers. Your message, the photo, the way you cared for Noah with nothing to your name. It reminded me that kindness still exists. You made me want to believe in it again. He paused as if surprised by his own honesty. Clara's cheeks flushed. She didn't know what to say. Damien, the cold man she had once thought incapable of warmth, had just spoken words that made her heart pound. I don't know what to say, she admitted with an awkward smile. But thank you for everything. Damien gave a faint smile in return, but inside he was battling himself. That confession had been a dangerous crack in the fortress he'd built around his heart. He feared the emotion, feared that if he stepped further, he'd lose control. He stood, smoothing his shirt, trying to compose himself. You're doing good work, he said, his voice returning to its usual even tone. Head home. Noah's probably waiting. Clara nodded, but her eyes followed him as he left. She picked up the article again, running her fingers gently over the paper. She was deeply moved by Damien's past, but it was his words, I helped because of you, that echoed in her mind. She didn't dare hope, but she couldn't deny that something was beginning to grow in her heart for him, something more than gratitude. In his office, Damien sat down and looked out over the city, now lit with a sea of sparkling lights. He thought about Clara, about Noah, about the quiet, unexpected moments they had shared. He knew he was standing at a crossroads, open his heart and risk the pain, or keep hiding behind the walls that had always protected him. He pulled out his phone, opened the photo of Clara and Noah, and for the first time he didn't try to push away the warmth that stirred in him. But he still wasn't ready. Not yet. Are you still following the story? Please leave your thoughts on the story in the comments below. All your comments are the motivation for us to create better stories. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you very much. Clara stood in front of the mirror in her tiny apartment, hands trembling as she adjusted the simple black dress she had borrowed from Mia, her co-worker at the cafe. The dress hugged her modestly, ending just above her knees. It was the most elegant thing she had ever worn, yet she still felt completely out of place. Tonight, Damien had invited her and Noah to a Cole Enterprises charity gala supporting orphans in Chicago. You should come, he had said the day before, his voice low but firm. Noah will enjoy it, and I want you there. Clara had agreed, but now looking at herself in the mirror, she wondered if she was making a huge mistake. Noah, how does mommy look? She asked, turning to the baby lying in his crib, dressed in a navy blue onesie Rachel, Damien's assistant, had gifted them. Noah grinned, flailing his tiny arms as if in approval. Clara laughed, but her heart was pounding. She wasn't used to glamorous events. chandeliers, ball gowns, or the stares of wealthy strangers. But Damien had asked, and after his confession last week, "I helped because of you." She couldn't say no. Damien arrived in a sleek black SUV, driving himself instead of using a chauffeur. He stepped out in a black tuxedo, hair neatly styled, looking like he belonged on the cover of a magazine. When he saw Clara, he stopped, his gaze sweeping from her dress to the polished flats she'd carefully cleaned. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice slightly uncertain. Clara blushed, holding Noah a little closer. "Thank you. I just hope I don't look completely out of place." Damien smiled as he opened the car door. "You belong anywhere, Clara." The event was held at a grand hotel in downtown Chicago. The ballroom sparkled with chandeliers and white silk-draped tables. Clara held Noah in her arms, doing her best to remain calm as they stepped inside. Around them, guests in tuxedos and evening gowns sipped wine and chatted in hushed tones. She felt like a fish out of water, especially as curious glances landed on her and the baby. "Who do they think I am?" she wondered, gripping Noah a little tighter. Sensing her tension, Damien gently placed a hand on her back and guided her through the crowd. "Don't worry," he whispered. "They're just jealous you brought the most adorable date tonight." Clara laughed, and the warmth of his hand eased her nerves. He led her to a quiet corner, where Rachel waited with a high chair for Noah. "I'll watch the little guy for a bit," Rachel said with a wink. Clara hesitated, but when Noah beamed at Rachel, she handed him over with a small nod. Damien then led Clara to the center of the ballroom, where key donors had gathered. He introduced her with quiet pride. "This is Clara Monroe, someone very special to me, and that little one over there, Noah, is the heart of tonight's event." Clara froze, cheeks burning. "Someone very special?" She looked at Damien, stunned, but he merely smiled as if it were the most natural thing to say. The donors nodded, some offering warm smiles, but Clara could still hear faint whispers. "Who is she? Special how?" She tried to ignore it, focusing instead on Damien. When it was time for speeches, Damien stepped onto the stage. He spoke about the foundation, the importance of helping orphan children. His voice was steady but emotional. Clara stood at the back listening, thinking of his past. And then, when he spoke of people who choose to love, even when they have nothing, his eyes found hers across the room. Her heart skipped a beat. He was talking about her, about Noah, about them. After the speech, the band began playing a soft ballad. Damien returned and extended his hand. "Dance with me?" Clara shook her head quickly, panicking. "I don't know how, and everyone's watching." Damien gently took her hand. "Don't pretend. Just be the woman who saved a baby with nothing but her heart." His words, raw and sincere, left Clara no room to refuse. She let him lead her to the dance floor, her hand shaking slightly as it rested on his shoulder. They moved slowly, swaying to the rhythm. Clara stumbled a bit, stepping on his foot once or twice. "Are you trying to destroy my shoes?" he teased, and she burst into laughter, the tension melting away. Under the soft lights, she felt the warmth of his hand, the steadiness of his hold. They didn't speak, but their eyes said everything. Clara saw a gentleness in Damien she'd never seen before. And Damien, he saw in her something he hadn't dared to believe in for years: trust. As the song slowed, Damien drew her closer. Their faces were inches apart, breaths mingling. Clara's heart pounded, but she didn't step back. Damien leaned down, and in a bold, unguarded moment, his lips touched hers. The kiss was hesitant, a little off-center, almost clumsy, but it was real, filled with unspoken emotions, the kind built slowly over time. Clara nearly lost her balance, but Damien caught her, and for a heartbeat, the world disappeared. They pulled apart, both stunned. Clara's face turned crimson, eyes wide. I'm sorry," she stammered. Damien shook his head gently, his voice quiet. "Don't apologize. I'm not." He held her hand tighter, as if afraid she'd run. Clara looked at him, her heart a storm of feelings. She wanted to say something, but all she could do was smile through her flushed cheeks. Around them, the crowd faded away. It was just the two of them, hands entwined, hearts exposed. But as the next song began, Clara noticed the curious glances again. She remembered where they were, and anxiety crept back in. "I should check on Noah," she said softly. Damien nodded but didn't release her hand right away. "Are you okay?" he asked, concerned. Clara nodded, but inside she wasn't. That kiss had changed everything. She returned to where Noah was playing with Rachel, scooping him into her arms and taking a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She glanced back across the ballroom. Damien was talking to a donor, but his eyes were still on her. She knew what she was feeling now, something deeper than gratitude, but she was afraid. Afraid of his world, so different from hers, afraid of where these emotions might lead. Damien, meanwhile, stood among the guests, but his mind was elsewhere. That kiss, it hadn't been planned, but he didn't regret it, not for a second. He wanted to tell her that she and Noah had become the most important part of his life, but fear still lingered, of the past, of being hurt again. Still, as he watched Clara cradle Noah from across the room, he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't walk away this time. Fate had brought them together, and this time, he wasn't going to let her go. Clara walked into the Cole Enterprises office, her heart heavy. Noah was home with Mrs. Linda, but she felt his presence with her, reminding her to stay strong. Ever since the kiss at the charity gala last week, everything between her and Damien had shifted. The lingering glances, the accidental brush of fingers as they exchanged documents, the way Damien smiled whenever Noah's name came up, all of it made her heart race. But today the office felt different. Whispers followed her down the hall. Rachel, usually warm and chatty, merely nodded at her with a tight smile. Clara sat down at her desk and opened her laptop. There, waiting in her inbox, was an email from a colleague with the subject line, "Have you seen this?" Attached was a tabloid article from a local gossip site. CEO Damien Cole and the mystery woman, single mother or gold digger? Clara's chest tightened. The article dug into her past, growing up in a small town, dropping out of college, working odd jobs, and adopting Noah, who was coldly referred to as a child of unknown origin. They labeled her unworthy of Damien, hinting that she was using him to climb the social ladder. There were even pictures from the gala of Damien introducing her as someone special, accompanied by cruel, speculative commentary. Her face burned and her hands trembled. She closed the article, but the shame had already sunk deep. She had known the media could be harsh, but not this fast, not this brutal. And what about Damien? Would this hurt his reputation? Cole Enterprises was his life, and she couldn't be the reason he lost everything. Meanwhile, Damien was in a boardroom with key investors. One of them, Harold Grayson, slammed a printout of the article onto the table. "Care to explain this, Cole?" he barked. "You let some nobody drag the company into a scandal? Do you even realize the stock dropped 2% this morning?" Damien clenched his fists, his voice cold and sharp. "Clara has nothing to do with this. It's tabloid trash designed to stir clicks." Grayson sneered. "Cut her off. Publicly deny everything. Otherwise, I pull my funding." Damien shot to his feet, his tone dark and controlled. "You don't get to dictate my personal life, Grayson." He left the meeting, fury rising in his chest. He didn't care about the stocks or the headlines. He only cared about Clara, the woman who made him believe in goodness again, the woman he had kissed beneath the soft lights of the gala. He rushed to her desk, but Clara was gone. Rachel, standing nearby, handed him an envelope. "She left this," she said softly. Damien opened it, hands slightly shaking. Clara's handwriting was neat but full of emotion. "Damien, thank you for everything, for the job, for your kindness, and for the moments I'll never forget. But I can't be the reason you lose what you've built. Noah and I will be okay. I don't want you to have to choose between us and the life you've created. Take care of yourself. Clara." Damien felt the ground vanish beneath his feet. He rushed to the lobby, but Clara had already disappeared. He called her, but she didn't answer. Standing in the center of his glittering empire, he felt more hollow than ever. Clara and Noah, the two people who brought light into his life, were gone, and he had done nothing to stop them. He returned to his office, shut the door, and sat down, head in his hands. He thought of their kiss, of Clara's eyes, of Noah laughing in his arms. "You let them go," he whispered, his voice raw. But this time, Damien wouldn't retreat. He had spent his whole life behind walls, but Clara and Noah had broken through them, and he couldn't let them vanish. This wasn't about reputation or the company. This was about family, something he'd never dared to dream of having. He stood and called out, "Rachel?" She stepped in, startled by the intensity in his voice. "Find her. Call everyone. Check her apartment, her friends, anywhere she might have gone." Rachel nodded quickly, recognizing the urgency in his tone. Clara sat on a bus, Noah asleep in her arms. She stared out the window, blinking back tears. She had packed a few belongings, left her tiny apartment behind, and was heading toward a shelter on the outskirts of the city. One she'd heard supported single mothers. She didn't want to leave Damien, but the article and the whispers had made her feel like a burden. She thought of their kiss, of the way he called her someone special, but she couldn't let him sacrifice everything because of her. When they arrived at the shelter, a kind social worker welcomed her. Clara held Noah close and tried to smile, but her heart was heavy. She didn't know what came next, but she believed she had done the right thing. For Damien, for Noah. She opened her bag and found the little toy Damien had given Noah. The sight of it broke her. Tears finally fell as she whispered, "I'm sorry, baby." She kissed Noah's forehead and held him tighter. Damien didn't sleep that night. He drove to Clara's apartment, but it was empty. He called every contact, every lead, desperate for any clue. By morning, Rachel found a trace, an address for a transitional housing facility in the suburbs. Without hesitation, Damien got in his car and drove. He didn't care about headlines, about Grayson, about investors. He only cared about Clara and Noah, and this time he wasn't letting them go. Clara sat in a small room at a transitional housing center in the suburbs of Chicago, the soft glow of a desk lamp illuminating the whiteboard where she had just written down job interview tips. In front of her were 3 single mothers, each holding a worn notebook, taking careful notes. Noah sat in his stroller beside her, happily babbling as he played with the stuffed bear Damien had once given him. Clara smiled and pointed at the board. "Okay, when they ask, what's your greatest strength? Talk about a skill you're proud of. What would you say yours is?" Though she had only been at the shelter for a few days, Clara had already started hosting free workshops to help the women gain confidence and prepare for job interviews. But inside, she couldn't stop thinking about Damien. The letter she had left at Cole Enterprises, the decision to walk away in order to protect him from the media storm, still stung. She missed the clumsy kiss under the soft lights of the gala, the way he had called her someone special. She told herself she had done the right thing, but every time Noah smiled, she saw Damien in his eyes, gentle, full of love. She wiped her eyes, forcing herself to focus on the lesson, not wanting the women in front of her to see her sadness. Then the door burst open. Clara looked up, and her heart stopped. Damien stood there, shirt slightly wrinkled, hair tousled, eyes filled with determination and a trace of fear. "Clara," he said, voice hoarse. The women in the room exchanged curious glances, but Clara saw only him. She stood slowly, hugging Noah closer, her voice trembling. "Damien? What are you doing here?" He walked toward her, ignoring the stares around him. Stopping just a few steps away, Damien dropped to one knee. The room fell silent, except for Noah's soft cooing. "Clara," he said, voice low but steady, "you made me believe in family again. You and Noah, you're my family. I don't care about the media, or the investors, or any of it. Come home. Not to a mansion, but to me. To us." Clara's eyes widened as tears welled up. She looked into Damien's face and saw honesty, fear, and love all at once. She thought of everything they'd shared. Lunches, quiet afternoons, his laughter with Noah, the kiss. She had run because she thought she was a burden, but here he was, kneeling before her, ready to give up everything for her and Noah. "Damien," she whispered, her voice cracking, "I didn't want you to lose everything." Damien shook his head and reached for her hand. "I lost everything the moment you left," he said. "Clara, I love you. I love Noah. Please, let me be your family." His words washed over her, dissolving every doubt inside her heart. She nodded through her tears and whispered, "Yes." The room erupted in gentle applause. The women smiled and clapped, and Noah, sensing the moment, laughed and waved his tiny hands in joy. Damien stood and pulled Clara and Noah into his arms. He held them tightly, finally feeling like he'd found where he belonged. "We're going to be okay," he whispered, kissing Clara's forehead. She leaned into him, knowing it wasn't just a promise, it was the start of something new. 3 months later, a small wedding was held in a quiet park on the edge of Chicago, beneath the golden autumn leaves. Clara wore a simple white dress, her hair loose and natural, holding a bouquet of white daisies. Damien, in a gray suit, couldn't take his eyes off her. Noah, now 7 months old, wore an adorable mini outfit, held by Rachel as he clutched a plastic wedding ring Damien had picked out just for him to guard. There were no chandeliers or grand ballrooms, just close friends, Mrs. Linda, and a few colleagues from Cole Enterprises. Rachel read a short poem, and during the vows, Noah giggled and handed the ring to Damien. Damien knelt down, sliding the ring onto Clara's finger, his voice trembling. "I promise to love and protect you and Noah, forever." Clara smiled through tears as she slipped the ring onto his hand. "And I promise to stand by you, no matter what." They kissed, surrounded by applause, and Noah's laughter, a joyful affirmation that their love was real. After the wedding, Clara and Damien moved into a small house in the suburbs, with a yard for Noah and a cozy room full of toys. Damien still ran Cole Enterprises, but now he made time for bedtime stories, morning walks, and family dinners. The press eventually forgot the old scandal, and even though investor Grayson pulled his funding, it couldn't shake the company or Damien's resolve. He had found something far more important than stocks or reputation: a home. 1 year later, Clara stood in front of a new building in Chicago. A sign sparkled above the door: Noah's Nest. It was a nonprofit foundation she had founded to support orphans and single mothers, providing shelter, education, and career training. With Damien's financial support and encouragement, Clara had turned her dream into reality. She worked tirelessly, meeting families, running workshops, helping others find the opportunities she once longed for. Damien, despite his busy schedule, remained the charity's biggest donor. He attended events, played with the kids, and looked at Clara with unwavering pride. "She's the heart of Noah's Nest," he said once in an interview, holding Noah, now toddling around confidently. Clara, standing beside him, smiled, because she knew this mission was no longer just hers. It was theirs. Every night, as they sat on the couch with Noah asleep in their arms, Clara and Damien would look at each other and know they had found happiness. It wasn't perfect, but it was whole. From a wrong number, to a photo, to a chance meeting, they had built a family. Clara reached for Damien's hand and whispered, "Thank you for finding me." Damien kissed her forehead and replied, "Thank you for giving me a home."